Hello YouTube, Sidekick here in my trusty A-4E Skyhawk. Just getting set up for a mission. You can see there's a little bit going on as we're getting our nav computer set up, dealing with a radar warning. Let me just get things sorted out here in the cockpit, and then we can talk about what we're out here doing today. Okay, let's take a look at the mission that we're out there flying. Situation is this: here we are off the coast in our A4. Our target is here. It's a refinery. It's inland about 20 nautical miles. The problem is that we have an SA-2 site between us and the target. If we try to fly directly there at altitude, we're going to get taken up by the SA-2 site. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn and dive and stay outside the tracking radar range. That's the inner red circle of the SA-2 site. We're going to go down over to the coast. Once we get to the coast, we'll actually be able to use the terrain to mask us from the radar. So then we can fly in at low level, and then we're going to fly down this valley here that I call the Two Apps Trench. We're going to have to be careful because there is some light AAA at the beginning. We're going to want to be moving pretty quickly as we go through this area here. When we get to waypoint 1, which is in our nav computer as waypoint 1, so we'll know when we reach it. We'll also know that we're beyond the tracking radar range again. So that means that we can actually climb, and there's a ridge that runs along here. If we stay to the north side of the ridge, we'll be actually able to climb up to an attack altitude and attack the target from a high enough level to stay out of the way of the AAA that is protecting it, hopefully, and then we'll go out the same way. So let's go back into the game and see how it's going. Well, as you can hear, how it's going is that we are periodically getting the radar warning receiver. Now that is the search radar for the site, and it seems to be intermittent, so that's okay. So we are continuing to dive down and head for the coast. I'm pretty sure that we're outside of the tracking radar range, and it isn't converting to the tracking tone, so I think we're okay. But we aren't down low enough yet to allow us to turn towards the radar, so we're going to keep flying down. I have put waypoint 1 up on the BDHI. It's not really important right now because we're not going to fly directly to the waypoint. It only becomes important at the end of the kind of low-level ingress, so we know when to turn. Okay, while we're getting set up here, let me just talk a little bit about this mission and this video. It came about a little while ago because I made a video about flying on Yappy Dog's tactical training server. Actually, we're getting ready to make our turn here. Just let's see if we can get this terrain to mask us from the SAM radar so we can relax a little bit. See, the problem is coming into a SAM radar like that over the water, you really can't fly low enough to get under the radar. You need to have some terrain between you and the radar. So far, so good. Oop, don't like that. That's tracking tone. So, let's see. It's either tracking tone or a different radar. Anyways, we got to try and get some hill between us and that radar site. So pull inland a little bit here, get a little bit lower. That's better. So we're just trying to stay down here, down low enough to use the terrain to keep masking us from the radar as we come up to Two Apps. Now, so as I was saying, I made that video. It was basically in response to a video that Yappy Dog made where he basically challenged people to try out his server and to try attacking an airbase on his server using a low-level attack. Well, I tried doing that, and I failed miserably. So, I decided that, in kind of Captain Kirk fashion, that to change the rules of the game. And I basically said that, in actual fact, a low-level attack was probably not the most effective way to attack a target protected by a lot of low-level AAA. And then, in fact, the A4 and jets of its era, the A4 was designed in the late 1950s, they were designed to defeat enemy air defenses by dropping from high altitude rather than using low-level ingress. Okay, here we come up to 2 apps. Let's be paying attention here. There's a lot of AAA around here. We need to be scooting, literally, and staying low. But now, hopefully, we'll truly be buried in this trench. We aren't going to hear any more of that SAM radar, at least. All right. So, as I was saying, the whole point was that the A4 was actually designed to drop ordnance from altitude, not to do the whole low-level ingress thing. And that's actually the way that A4s and other U.S. Navy and U.S. Air Force bombers were used during the Vietnam War, because that's the way they were designed. I mean, unfortunately, the advent of surface-to-air missiles kind of changed the rules of the game. As the war progressed and the North Vietnamese developed an increasingly dense network of SAMs, more and more effort needed to go into defeating or neutralizing the SAMs so that bombers could still continue to operate at altitude. A variety of tactics to do that were developed, including jamming and special suppression of enemy air defense flights, the wild weasel tactics. And overall, those tactics were reasonably effective because the majority of A4s in Vietnam were still lost to AAA. Only a small fraction were actually lost to SAMs. But the SAMs did do their job because they really degraded the effectiveness of the strike aircraft in a variety of ways, like making them fly lower to avoid SAM coverage and putting them in the range of AAA. So this mission was kind of a way to look at what it would be like to fly a mission in an A4, where you had to do both, avoid a SAM by doing a low-level ingress, but then climb up and attack the target from altitude to avoid AAA around the target. And I thought it would make a great multiplayer mission, and by the way, if anyone is interested in working on that, come by my Discord. I'll happily share the mission. I don't do a lot of multiplayer flying, so if there are people out there who do, I'd love your help. At any rate, after I had done the mission in the A4, the Christmas sale came along, and someone said, "Hey, why don't you fly the Viggen? It seems like your kind of jet." Which is true, and I'd been thinking about that for a while, so I took the plunge and I got the Viggen. Now, I'm still learning the Viggen, and trust me, there's a lot to learn. But as soon as I got the jet, I realized that I wanted to fly this mission again in the Viggen, because, brother, this was what the Viggen was actually meant to do, unlike the A4. We'll talk more about that in the second part of the video when we fly the Viggen, but life is getting a little bit exciting here as we're coming up to the last ridge before our turning point. And if you're looking at the BDHI, if you can read it, you can see that it has been counting down the nautical miles to the turning point. Now, I'm cheating actually on this mission right now because I got a couple of smoke marks, but I wouldn't actually need them. I just left them in for now, but in fact, we could get rid of them and we could be using the nav computer. And this is where the nav computer really comes in handy, trying to figure out exactly not only when to turn, but because we know where the target is with respect to the waypoint, we can use the BDHI to measure our distance and our track away from the waypoint, and that will actually send us to the target. So even with only using one waypoint, we can use that to vector us onto the target. You can see we're coming up to the turning point here, and if you'll recall from the mission briefing, we're going to find the target about 290 degrees, about 10 nautical miles out there, and there we go past the turning point now. The thing is that we also know that we're beyond the tracking radar range of the SAM site, so now we can start to gain altitude. Now, if you're paying attention, though, you'll notice, some things about the A4 and flying this. First of all, we didn't make a bad rate of knots down through the trench, but we really didn't get much faster than 400 knots and didn't even get up to 400 all the time. Second is, loaded as heavily as we are, it is no mean feat to climb an A4 up to bomb dropping altitude, carrying both bags and bombs, as the saying goes, because we got a couple of external fuel tanks on board as well. The practice during the Vietnam War was not to drop the fuel tanks, but to carry them back to the carrier even empty. So, at any rate, we are managing to get up to a decent altitude. You can see the target coming up there on the left. And so we are going to be able to... Now, we do need to get up high enough. We don't want to be getting under more than... We want to drop in the bomb certainly at between 2,000 and 3,000 feet. so we can avoid being interfered with by the 23 millimeter flak around the site. 57 millimeter flak would reach out even higher, but we're just having to worry about 23 millimeter in this mission. Here you can see the target just appearing beside the bow, the rib of the cockpit there. We're going to go a little bit farther. Once we get up to a certain altitude, we're probably going to hear from the SAM again, but it shouldn't have enough time to lock on us, track us, and fire anything before we actually drop the bombs and be gone. Getting pretty close, just pulling around to this side there. It's the SAM. He's back. I'll get a little bit closer. If we don't get close enough to the target, we'll end up in a shallow dive. We'll end up dropping lower than we want to. So, pays to get in a little tighter here. Still nothing to worry about from the SAM. We're not getting the tracking radar yet. All right, time to roll in. Just a bog standard A4 attack. Lift vector to the target. Pull up to the target. Oop, there we get the tracking radar. Good thing we're getting out of here soon. Roll out on the target. Get on the target. And pickle and hold. And the bombs are gone. And pull hard away. And it looks like from our bird's eye view, we can see that we actually hit the target. Time to be out of here now. And we're basically going to fly out the way we came in, and I'm not anticipating any trouble. But I'm not going to fly the whole mission. There's not really a whole lot more to be learned from it. So the thing that I want you to notice about flying the A4 is that it's perfectly capable of flying the low-level ingress and then dropping bombs accurately, as we just did. But also, like I said, notice that, the best speed we were really able to maintain was about 400 knots. And although the A4 flies low pretty well, you do have to struggle to keep it down in some ways. And again, once you put a full load of bombs and extra fuel on the A4, although it still maintains that marvelous roll rate, it's not really as agile as it is when it's empty, especially in the vertical, in the pitch axis. So I want you to remember all of those things as we switch over now to flying the same mission in a jet that was actually designed for low-level deep strike missions. And that, of course, is the AJS-37 Viggen. And so here we are in the Viggen, once again approaching the coast in similar fashion to what we were doing in the A4. The first thing you'll notice that we have some interesting symbology that help us keep a constant altitude when we're flying at low level, which is one thing that's missing in the A4. So at the A4, at this kind of altitude, other than having the radar warning continually going off, we don't really have a good way of maintaining altitude. And of course, the problem with the A4's radar warning is that every time you bank, it changes the radar altitude, and so you continually have the warning going off. Unlike that, in the Viggen, basically we just need to get our horizon line down to the top or below the tops of those poles, and we'll know that we're below our reference altitude, which in this case I set to around 100 meters. So nice and low. Basically a lot easier to fly a lot lower in the Viggen. Hard to believe when 150 meters, 400 feet starts feeling high. But for the Viggen, that can actually be pretty high. So as you can see, the Viggen's flying actually quite a bit lower than the A4 was, and it's not all that hard to do. The second thing you're going to notice is the speed. Even without the afterburner on, we're touching about 900 kilometers an hour, which is about 485 knots, which is almost 100 knots faster than we were flying in the A4, and we're not even really trying yet in the Viggen. So, it's worth understanding exactly what's going on here. The Viggen was designed in the late 1960s after surface-to-air missiles had made their presence felt in Vietnam, and the entire philosophy of how to penetrate enemy air defenses had changed. Up until the early 1960s, you got through enemy air defenses by flying over them. After the advent of SAMs, that really wasn't an option, so you had to penetrate enemy air defenses by flying through them, which basically meant getting down really low and flying really fast, so that A, they couldn't pick you up on radar, and even if they could see you, like low-level AAA, you'd be flying so fast that you'd simply defeat them because there's just no way that they could track you. And so the Viggen was designed with that whole philosophy in mind. Like, again, look at how low we're flying compared to the A4, and this is high for a Viggen. Yeah, it doesn't stop AAA from having a go at us, as you'll see here, but they're really not even coming close. And again, we're not even flying as fast as the Viggen will go. Once again, we're nestling right down on the bottom of the trench here. And I haven't even put the pedal all the way to the metal. We'll save that for our ingress to the actual target. So as I was saying, the whole point, the Viggen was basically designed to do this job. This was the way that enemy air defenses were going to be defeated. By the late 1960s, people were thinking about ways of getting in low and still being able to deliver ordnance accurately if you couldn't do it from altitude. And the Viggen is basically a weapon system that's designed to do that. And I'm looking forward to actually exploring that a little bit more. And talking about all the different ways that the Viggen can actually deliver ordnance while basically staying under 2,000 or 3,000 feet, and then only propping up to those altitudes very, very briefly. One of the other things that the Viggen automates that you can do in the A4, but which is a lot easier in the Viggen, is the waypoint system. It's basically designed for a mission like this, where you very carefully plan the route that you're going to fly, including the target. You program that into the jet, and then it guides you through all of those waypoints. And the symbology on the HUD, as you can see, we're not flying directly towards the waypoint, but we don't need to. When we get close to the waypoint, we'll line up directly on it. Now, we were able to do that in the A4 using the PDHI and the nav computer, but it's just a whole lot simpler in the Viggen. Again, the A4 turned out to be adaptable to the situation that it found itself in, but the Viggen was designed for this world. And when you fly it in this kind of mode, you really appreciate the difference. Even flying a jet like the A4, that's really a lot of fun to fly low. The A4 is still clearly not been designed for that work in mind, whereas the Viggen has been. Again, just the symbology telling us that we're a little bit high, we can get a little bit lower. It's actually interesting at this altitude. It's not always easy to tell the difference between 150 meters and under 100 meters, which is really where you do want to be. Not only to defeat the SAM radar, but when you start talking about AAA, when you can start getting down to 50 meters or below 50 meters, you can even start defeating the AAA that way, especially if you're not approaching over water so they can't see you coming. I mean, we're almost up to 1,000 kilometers an hour now, so going in the range of 550 knots. 550 knots at 50 meters off the deck, 100 feet off the deck. It's going to take some pretty alert AAA gunners to be able to process all of that information in time to engage you before you're gone. And again, unlike the A4, where we popped up to do the actual attack, because the A4 really doesn't have very good bombing aids for bombing at low level. All of the Viggen's bombing aids were designed to be used at low level, so we don't actually have to pop up at all. We stay right down here at treetop level. Again, the HUD guides us directly to the target, which we could do in the A4, but again, it was a little bit more work. And so what we're going to do is, when we get just a little bit closer to the target, we are going to pop up slightly. We're going to pull off to the right so we can put the target off to the left where we can see it. We're going to use the dive bombing mode in the Viggen. Looking forward to getting out on the range and talking about how these bombing modes work. It's taken me a little while to figure that out. All of the other videos kind of are very procedural. They tell you what to do. They don't really tell you what's going on. So I've been trying to work that out. But anyways, we're going to attack using the dive bombing mode. For those of you who do know the Viggen, are coming up. We got the safety off. And here comes some flak, but again, even at this altitude, because we're going so fast, it just really doesn't have a hope of catching us. And as you can see, we dropped the bomb successfully. We're going to stay low and head around the corner here around the ridge, get the ridge between us and the AAA, as well as between us and the SAM radar. And there you can see a successful low-level strike by the Viggen. So anyways, that's the two apps trench run two ways using the A4 and the Viggen, both very enjoyable, but both very, very different. And also an introduction to the AJS-37 Viggen, and you can expect to see quite a bit more content on this jet coming on my channel. So I hope you enjoyed the video. As per usual, like and subscribe. And for now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.